Hello, welcome to the channel and thanks for joining me. Today we start with a blank table because if you're looking to get your first personal cassette player, this may be exactly how you see things and you don't know where to start with it. So I'm just giving you a quick tip for today really. I'm working on a Linguaphone cassette player today. This particular one doesn't work. It doesn't work off batteries anyway. There's rusted terminals on it and it plays really slowly. So it kind of just made me realise that perhaps if you're a youngster that's looking to get a personal cassette player for the first time, or any cassette player for the first time really, or maybe you've been around the block a few times and you're on a budget and just looking for something cheap and cheerful to keep you going, it occurred to me that it might be worth looking at Linguaphone. Now Linguaphone, for the youngsters especially that aren't familiar with the brand, are, or at least were, a company that specialised in language courses. And the idea with that is that you'd learn a language basically from a cassette tape. These days of course it's all on the internet or digitally, and of course there may be people out there watching that remember it even on vinyl records before it went to tape in the 60s and 1970s. This particular set is actually from 1973 and it's a Spanish course, beautiful in fact. Then in here you have the paperwork that goes with it. You have the gorgeous books that give you all the quizzes and teaching the various lessons in the language. I know that's not what we're here for today, but also comes with things like this, which is an absolutely stunning little fold out, and that's got blank cassettes in there. So if you want cheap and cheerful cassettes, these ones are brand new in fact, never been played, and nice quality actually, and fairly decent length cassettes. So worth picking these up at a fair price because not many people have the requirement to learn language skills on cassette these days. Personally, I think it's a little bit sacrilege to ruin a whole set like this, but you could use it for that purpose if you so desired. However, aside from that, Linguaphone did have their own branded cassette players. Now I featured a Sanyo MGP11 on the channel before, so do check that out. But basically the Linguaphone branded one, to all intents and purposes, is exactly the same unit, and it was actually branded with the MGP11 mark on the bottom of the unit as well. I think this particular one is, yeah, it's in really nice condition. It's in there with its headphones and what have you. But again, that's not why we're here today particularly, because there was one that superseded that, which was the ST702. And whilst this one is a little bit battered, I believe, yeah, there we go. It's brand new. It's never actually been opened. It's still sealed up in the bag inside. The headphones are there, and all that dust and detritus that you can see in there is actually just the degenerated foam from the headphones. I've not even opened the case to clean it all up yet. But in any event, that's a sealed brand new one. But I did come across this old one, and here we have it. And it's a perfectly nice little little tape player. It hasn't got a radio. I was going to say radio cassette then, but essentially you've got a power in there if you want it to run it day and night if you're based in one place, maybe sat at a desk. But you've also got batteries in there as well, and you've got a headphone socket on the top and a master volume control and a little operation LED to show you that it's working correctly as well. In terms of the function controls, you've got play, stop, fast forward and rewind. Now, not all tape players of the time had rewind. Actually, it was quite a luxury on certain models. But of course, if you were learning a course, then it was really handy to be able to rewind and recover or practice one of the lines that you were trying to learn. So these sorts of tapes come up in sets quite often, and they're generally regarded, especially by those that are selling them, as, you know, just a Linguaphone cassette player and more specific to the Linguaphone course. In actual fact, there's no reason why you couldn't just pick one of these up, give it a bit of a service and start using it to play your own tapes perfectly well. There's nothing specific on this that limits you. It hasn't got to be used for practicing language courses. It will play music just fine. So it's always worth picking up one of these and maybe give it a bit of a service, and it's cheap and cheerful, might be worth a look. So anyway, today I'm going to look at this particular one. I've already given it a bit of a buff and a bit of a wipe, but as I say, it's playing really slowly. It doesn't work off batteries, this one. So it's quite a typical case, I guess, of what you might find in an old Walkman type thing. So quite handy. Have a look inside, see how we can clean up the battery contacts, change the belts on it, give it a general service, and go from there. So anyway, that's just a quick sort of thing really. As I say, I was about to service this one. It occurred to me that there might be people out there that, you know, could perhaps learn the tip, if you like, of going in here, buying one that's not obviously a mass market Walkman, if you like, but is perfectly good at doing the job if you're on a bit of a budget. So anyway, let's go on and have a look at this one in a bit more detail. So here we are then. Today we're going to take a look at this Linguaphone ST702, mysterious cassette player that it is. And the first thing we want to do is probably remove the 4 screws from the back. Also, there is a belt clip that can come away. I don't think it needs to. We'll just lift the tab and slide that out. That'll allow us to get in there and give that a proper clean a bit later. Right, 4 screws then. And I don't know if the battery cover needs to come away, but easy as that, so might as well. Right, okay. So the back cover comes away. Now I thought this was a little bit crusty. It was covered in some sort of grime when I got it, and I noticed when I started wiping it that the ink, like laser printed ink, had come off the label. It was very smeary when I wiped it, and I think that's the battery acid, and I can see that it's corroded now. That spring needs cleaning, at least possibly replacing, and you can see the general detritus and the crustiness and the leaky battery acid and what have you all inside there. So we'll clean all that out, but ironically changing the belt would be a very easy operation. Simple as that. In fact, you can see the old one's been there for quite some while, deformed. That'll give you some sort of wow and flutter. It wouldn't really matter for speech too much, to be honest. It's not that bad. It'd be perfectly fine for practicing your language skills. Not so good for playing your music back. And also there's a second belt underneath, which you may just see in there. So we'll need to get to that as well. Again, that'll be easy enough to do, but yeah, again, it would probably not be worth it for too much for speech and things like that, more for music. Having said that, the whole point, of course, of Linguaphone is that you're constantly stopping, rewinding, stop, fast forward, rewind, fast forward, trying to practice your lines over and over again. And often it's usually the inner belt that's the transfer belt for your fast forward and rewind and that kind of thing. This belt on the top is more to take the drive from the motor spindle itself to the capstan. You tend to find that that's the main sort of drive belt, and then the secondary or transfer belt underneath tends to give you the sort of ancillary functions from the other buttons. That's generally how it would work. So there we go. Right then, okay, let's get to the bottom belt, shall we? So the first thing is I just want to see if there are any screws holding the actual circuit board in place. It doesn't look really like there are. You can see the looks like to be the head cables coming up through. We've certainly got the battery connections coming through there. The 2 motor wires are picked up on these points here. Quite a few wires that are coming up actually through the board, which neat and tidy in some respects, a bit of a nuisance in other respects if you're servicing these items, because quite often it's a case of trying to get the board back into place whilst feeding the tiniest little cables through these, again, tinier holes all through the board to make sure that everything comes together properly and goes back where it came from. So I think there's only one screw actually holding the board in place, which is a tiny one down there, and I'm guessing these are probably the leaf switch contacts. Obviously we've got the motor cables coming up through here, and there's the head cable, but there's another cable that runs across here, and I'm not sure. It looks like it's a stereo head on this, but this may be a bridge to link both the channels together. It may just be mono for Linguaphone tapes to make the best use of the tape. I'm not really sure what's going on with that. I haven't really looked, but in any event, for today we're just going to go in and get this thing running so we can have a listen. So let's get this board away. Okay, well, I'm going to try and be cheeky here because I think we might even get away without having to take all this apart. I think if we can lift this, give us just enough access to get that second belt in there, you know. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. I was in the throes of heating up the iron just to pick all these cables away, and it's quite nice if you want to have a poke around sometimes and kind of see what's what and what chips and everything are in there and all the rest of it. But quite honestly, we don't need to do any of that today. All I want to do is get this belt away like so. There we go. And you can see the two belts that were on there, both deformed. Little snowman there, and he just needs a little carrot nose and a few little buttons, and all would be happy with the world. Right, anyway, I'm going to find some belts, get them on here, and that should do the job. Okie dokie, well, I've got a couple of belts now. So we've got the inner belt just there and the new outer belt just there. So I'm just going to go ahead and get these on, give them a bit of a try. Also, incidentally, there is a little semi-variable resistor, and I notice this one's got dust and gunk in it, which I'll clean out. Basically, there's a little semi-variable resistor, I should say, just there, and that's for adjusting the actual speed of the unit. I noticed the tape was running marginally slow actually, so yeah, hopefully we'll get this back all together and we can tweak the tape speed, and that'll be tickety-boo. So I've just got the first belt on, just checked that it is actually in the correct pulley groove on the bottom of the flywheel, which it is, and that's turning nicely and it's not too tight. So all that remains is to get the main motor belt on. Good stuff, plenty of grip there but not too tight. Good stuff. Right, just get this little screw back in and then we can test it. Actually, before we do, I wanted to replace this spring actually. And that just solders onto there. Actually, we might be able to just clean it up. Let's just have a little go. I'm going to desolder it first, just that we can get in there and give this thing a whole proper clean. So I'm just going to get a bit of lemon juice on that now, fizz away some of that corrosion, and I'm just going to get a little file over the rust, and we should be able to reinstate some function to this spring. I'll also just cut the cable back a tiny bit and re-tin the end, just give us a good contact when we solder it back on again. Yeah, as I thought, that one wasn't working very well on there, so what I've just done is removed it from the board, and now you can see the spring is nicely attached to the cable, and in that way I can feed the cable back in and then see if it reaches. If it doesn't, I can always cut it back enough with a new piece and join it up. Yeah, so I just had to cut a tiny bit back to some good metal there, and there's just enough flex there without straining the cable too much. So now we've cleaned up the battery contact, I've got the multimeter here on continuity. So what I'm just going to do is go from the spring that we've cleaned up, and hopefully via the clean spring through the solder joint, through the cable, back onto the trimmed cable, we should get, there you go, perfect. So that means it's going to run nicely off the batteries. Yeah, good stuff. So all I want to do now is actually power it up, check it for speed, and then I'm going to clean this back case because that's grotty, and then we'll get it back together again. I've just hooked this up to a bench power supply, so we've got positive and negative there on the battery terminals, and I've plugged in some little speakers just so as we can hear what's going on. And first up though, I'm going to fast forward it and rewind. Yeah, and I can see that the both the belts are working, in fact. Right, okay, good stuff. So now I'm just going to press play and check the speed. Yeah, actually you can, that's about the same speed it was before, which is slow, which is fine, that's okay. So I'll just go and pick that up now, but first I'm just going to actually put that screw back in just to steady this board a little bit. Good, well I've managed to adjust the speeds to the correct one. It's running really smoothly, really pleased with that. So I'm just going to get this crusty nastiness out of the back of the case here, and we should be able to give this a nice polish, and that'll be that. You can probably see that fizzing away actually. And all that is, I just keep a little bit of lime or lemon juice in a little tub. You'll be amazed how good it is at dissolving the battery acid and that sort of thing, well, the salts. Just fizzes away nicely. And we'll just give that a bit of a clean with a cotton bud. In fact, you can see it, look, all the crystals. If I just bring this up a little bit, I don't know if it will focus, but you might be able to see the crystals kind of breaking away and dissolving. Happy days. So I've just scraped it and dissolved it all away, and now I'm just flushing it with some isopropyl alcohol just to sort of neutralise it, clean it all up. Lovely. I've just screwed the back on, so a bit of isopropyl alcohol on the head here, and I'll do the capstan and the pinch roller as well. Might as well whilst we're in here. And I'll give it a bit of a polish and we'll all be done. So here it is then, the Linguaphone ST702. Not in terribly bad condition when it arrived, to be honest, but it didn't play very well, especially off the batteries. Basically there was a lot of battery leakage in there, crystallised battery residue inside, and the battery spring had actually rusted up and corroded and wasn't at all conductive really. In addition to that, when it was hooked up to the mains, it was running really slow. Maybe not such an issue. Maybe somebody even did it deliberately if they were learning a new language perhaps and were trying to, you know, kind of listen to the nuances and inflections and what have you. In any event, not good for playing music back. So what did we do then? Well, nothing too clever really. Just gave it a deep clean inside, scraped away the battery residue, removed and cleaned up the spring. So that's really shiny and bright now and it's working off its batteries. Replaced both of the belts as well to make it run true, smooth and reliably. We clean the head and the capstan and the pinch roller whilst you're in there, and of course increase the speed a fair bit just to make it run at its proper speed. So here it is now, and I'll just put a little tape in. I'll play you a few seconds of something. In fact, the first thing we'll do is fast forward it and you'll see that working, and rewind. And then play. Okay, so there she is, working nicely, no crackle or anything like that. I'll just play a bit on the other side. There we go. So you can see it's working nicely. And is it the best quality in the world? Well, of course not, but actually it is pretty reliable. It's solidly well built. You've got a nice little battery indicator light on there. It fast forwards and rewinds. Bearing in mind a lot of the base model Walkmans and what have you don't actually have the rewind facility. So all in all, it's not really that bad, to be fair. It plays quite nice, it plays true, and it's quite loud as well, actually, very powerful. So if you are looking at just getting into perhaps finding yourself a little occasional cassette player or a not too expensive retro Walkman, perhaps looking at something from the Linguaphone range might be quite a useful way of getting into it. And maybe, oh, I hate to say this, but you know, in this day and age with the digital age and what have you, maybe you could reuse the cassettes, record over them, record music and play back your own things on it anyway. But there you go then. So hopefully you found that interesting, and hopefully it's inspired you to get out there and get yourself a little tape player. But thanks very much for watching. Check out some of my other videos. I'll be back soon, but in the meantime, stay safe and all the best for now. Bye bye.